And one of the reasons that I launched Prometheism when I did, from out of this coronavirus crisis and in the midst of these massive uprisings, is because I think it's time and past time to begin developing a viable alternative that will prevent the disintegration of the United States, and that will carve out a political ideology and a spiritual orientation that's beyond the dichotomy of left and right, and that is beyond this dominance of Western spiritual life by the Abrahamic revelations for the past 2,000 years.
Does Christianity have a future into disorder, Jason? I know it might be a delicate question, simply because a lot of people on the traditional right might associate themselves either with Orthodox Christianity or pre-1962 Vatican 2.0 Catholicism, so Catholicism with a capital C. Mm-hmm. Do you believe that that such a worldview has a place for Christianity in it as an offshoot of Abrahamic theology, so to speak?
I think that Christianity is a ineradicable phase in the development of Western civilization. Nietzsche understood this very well. What Prometheus means when Shelley calls Frankenstein the modern Prometheus is very different from what Prometheus meant to Aeschylus. What Lucifer means to John Milton in Paradise Lost is inconceivable without Christianity as a catalytic agent. So, just like Nietzsche, I also think that we should never attempt to lobotomize Western identity in a way that would excise Christianity in order to effect a simple return to paganism, a neo-paganism that acts as if, the Christian Middle Ages never happened, is not a progressive or future-oriented movement. A futuristic spiritual reorientation of the West has to take Christianity into account as a force of dialectical transformation in a Hegelian sense. The Prometheism that I'm advocating would not have been possible but for the legacy of Christianity and the way in which, as Nietzsche put it, it immeasurably deepened the Western soul and made it capable both of a greater depth of suffering and also a more infinite vision, a more cosmic vision. So Christianity has to be recognized and honored as a catalytic agent that was integral to the evolution of the consciousness of our Promethean civilization. That's what I would say. Now, to bring it back to the ground on a more practical level, that was very abstract. To bring it back down to the ground and connect it to these predictions of the future that we were just discussing, I would say that various types of Christianity are going to fare better or worse during this coming crisis. And I'd say the one that's going to face the most catastrophic and precipitous collapse is the evangelical Christianity of the southern United States. They're just basically going to be destroyed. And because you see, to them, there is no positive way to integrate these advancing technologies. They reject wholesale, even, in vitro fertilization, and, they're bombing abortion clinics and are against stem cell research. What are they going to do when we need to keep up with Chinese genetic engineering? And when in order for students to function, they will have to have had their IQ enhanced when they were embryos being screened for implantation. They just are utterly incapable of grappling with the realities of singularity level technologies in any kind of a constructive way. And I think that in the event that we're able to promote Prometheism and really get this, social project off the ground, it will inevitably be branded by them as Satanism. There's no question that they will see this as a basically political platform for the Antichrist.
Dugin has the same problem, and the Eurasianists in general. It's exactly the same problem. Exactly, you described their problem there, not only the evangelical one.
I understand what you're saying, and to a large extent, I agree with you. I would say the evangelicals are in an even worse situation because, here's why. Yes, Russian Orthodox thought has a similar tendency to brand the Promethean as the satanic, and to be extremely conservative in terms of technological development. But interestingly enough, and perhaps ironically, Russian cosmism came from out of Russian Orthodoxy. Nikolai Fyodorov and the first generation of Russian cosmists were Russian Orthodox thinkers. So somehow there is a developmental matrix in Russian Orthodoxy which is capable of a mutation and evolution beyond Orthodoxy that is simply impossible in the context of American evangelical Christianity. So I would say the evangelicals will do worse. The Russian Orthodox will not do so well either. They're going to be the second group of Christians to go in this scenario. They'll hang on a little bit longer than the evangelicals. And the ones who will do best will be the Catholic Church. Because, Lucifer loved those people. They just know how to adapt to anything. And I bet you that by the middle of the 21st century, they will have canonized Giordano Bruno as a saint. The same Giordano Bruno that they burned in a public square in Rome, mark my words, they're going to canonize him as a saint. And they will do everything in their power to adapt. I mean, a few years back, the chief astronomer of the Vatican, came out and said that, yes, the universe is full of extraterrestrial intelligences, and by the way, they're our brothers. So clearly, they are preparing to adapt in some very significant ways.
So instead of having this prediction that Catholicism in a way will die off as a denomination and Orthodoxy will rise, we find ourselves about the prospect that call it religious Darwinism, if you want it, in a way, literally the survivors of the fittest. It's actually the other way around. If Catholicism is successful in adapting, it might be the only denomination left compared to evangelical and the Orthodox denominations.
I don't think Catholicism will survive, but it will survive for longer. And in the case of Catholicism, if they do things like canonize Bruno and canonize Teilhard de Chardin, that's another one. Teilhard de Chardin, in his lifetime, the author of the Phenomenon of Man and the thinker of the omega point concept and so forth, he was a Jesuit paleontologist and philosopher who was sidelined as a heretic in his own time. If they canonize Teilhard de Chardin's thought as part of the scholastic tradition of the Catholic Church, by making moves like this, they will transition to something that at some point is just not even Christianity anymore. And, they're going to wind up eventually saying things like, well, Lucifer also reflects the divine light. And, they're going to understand Lucifer the way that Carl Jung understands Lucifer in terms of archetypal psychology and as an archetype that is in a kind of dialectical relationship to the Christ figure. So that's what I see. It's possible for the Catholic Church. Of course, it depends on the concrete political decisions that they make. And the more they entrench themselves and the more conservative and recalcitrant they are, the more they will face the kind of violent breakup that you will see and implosion that you will see in some of the other denominations of Christianity.
When we're discussing all of these topics, somehow I come to the notion, Jason, that I actually don't want to see a world without the United States of America as a major player in geopolitical agendas. In a way, a lot of people will say that America is the great Satan, for example, and so on, which is apparently not the case. For me, although
America is the great Satan. Look, I'm an Iranian. by paternal descent. So, my fatherland invented the discourse that America is the great Satan. And I think that Ayatollah Khomeini was exactly right. America is the great Satan. In the same sense that evangelical Christians consider Prometheus to be Satan. The Promethean genius of America, that kind of will toward bold exploration, visionary futurism,
Faustian and inquisitorialism, yeah.
Yes, and the remaking of man as a god, right? Humanity becoming self-made and taking control of its own destiny and remaking itself. I mean, this is the symbolic meaning of the fact that Prometheus is the engineer of man, and that he made man to supersede the Olympian gods. Our destiny is to become gods who kneel and bow to no other gods. This is the essence of American individualism and enterprise and, cultural creativity.